she wrapped. It's over. And I think my impression is I didn't get to see her in the courtroom as you did, Arthur, but my impression was she was a disaster. She has no credibility. She was thoroughly embarrassed on the stand. And I don't even know anymore whether this jury is going to believe there was a sexual interlude. I actually think the defense did a pretty good job of suggesting she made the whole thing up to make money and to wind up extorting Donald Trump for something or to just threaten him. So I'll start with you, Arthur, because you were in the courtroom. Set the scene for us. And I know you spoke with Team Trump after the fact. What do you think?
Well, you know what I think is it's funny because there were people who were sitting 2 seats away from me who were like, "Oh, Stormy did great. They didn't lay a glove on her." And then this guy, a former judge who's on my radio show every night, he's been in the courtroom every day, and he's like, "It's the best day the Trump team ever had." So it kind of depends on who you speak with. But the criminal defense attorney who conducted the cross-examination for President Trump is a woman named Susan Neckles. She's very well known in New York, and she's very experienced. And I thought she was very good. Don't forget, she started on Tuesday with her cross-examination, and that was really all about money, 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 money. Because on direct, Stormy said, "Oh, I really wasn't in for the money." You know, I didn't answer your appropriate question. You said set the stage. Let me set the stage for a second because I was in the courtroom for the first time and maybe the only time. The jury. The jury, I always look, Megan, on how jurors dress. If they're not told by the judge how to dress, because old school judges used to say, like, dress like you're going to Sunday services. They don't do that anymore. But the jury dressed in a very appropriate way. Like, you could tell they're going somewhere that's serious. There's no jeans, there's no ripped clothes, there's no hoodies. They're all dressed in, like, we're down for business. And when Susan Neckles was really hitting it, it was a tennis match. I looked at the jurors. They're looking at Stormy. They're looking at the defense attorney. Stormy was dressed in a black jacket with a bright green top. She's a big woman, coming on and off the stand. She's tall. No one would ever use the word petite to describe her. And at times she was there, especially towards the end when she was kind of figuring out like what this is all about. And she was angling her body towards the jurors, answering the questions. But I
And
think
crossing
the
your
real
arms. For the listening audience, you're crossing your
yes,
arms
I'm
tightly.
sorry. Yes, so I'm crossing my arms and cheating towards the jurors and starting more to talk to the jurors than to Susan Neckles. But I thought the highlight of the cross-examination was towards the end. There were kind of two highlights, but she said to her, the question was, "And you've written 150 adult film scripts yourself, haven't you?" And Stormy was proud. "Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I wrote them all myself." And those are all fiction, correct? Correct. And those are stories that you've made up about men and women having sex in different scenarios. Correct, correct. So you're an expert creating fictitious stories that never happened, that aren't real. And she goes, "Well, the sex is real in those stories, like the sex was real here. And if I was making up this story, I would have made up a better story." But the point came across that, like, she's done this 150 times. She's made up these stories. And then the other highlight kind of was just at the very, very end. It was a question that Susan Neckles wasn't looking for an answer, was, "You don't know anything about how Donald Trump writes his checks, right? You don't know how they're logged in the books back in New York, right? You have nothing to do with his finances, correct?" "Correct." And she sat down. It was interesting. I mean, sometimes courtroom scenes can be very boring. It was not a boring day.
No, I mean, her testimony was anything but boring. Mark, you do this for a living as well, and you're not wrong. Like, ask a different person, you'll get a different take, and it tends to come down to politics. We're trying to keep it out of that. We're trying to give sound legal analysis, like how did she objectively do? Maybe you can't take politics out of this because in New York, the jury probably isn't in love with Trump. There might be a couple, but if you can be objective about it based on what we've read, how do you think she did?
Okay, I think that the prosecution jumped the shark by getting into the areas that they did. And for those not familiar with that, the same cringy, bizarre feeling you got when Fonzie was water skiing over sharks, we got when Stormy Daniels, in a fraud trial, testified to the former leader of a free world, laying in his boxers, posing on a bed, about to allegedly commit an extramarital affair. We shouldn't have that image in our head. it was problematic for the prosecution to get into those kind of details when I say to you in response to how did she do, it doesn't really matter. And by that, I mean any good defense lawyer would get up and say, look what the prosecution did. They wanted to show bad character like they did in the Harvey Weinstein case, and they wanted to focus on something other than the issue of whether he knowingly committed fraud. Why else would they bring her in? There's proof that she was paid. It wasn't necessary. Look at the lengths that they're going to try to prove this case when they don't have any direct evidence. So how did she do? She looked horrible, as she should, the same way Cohen's going to look. And I think that the defense could make a lot out of it in closing argument if they do.
So interesting. So Phil, here's just an example of what Susan Necheles tried to do on cross-examination of Stormy Daniels. She got into, for example, and there's a lot we can go through, but we'll start here. How Stormy Daniels I wasn't in this for the money. That's not why, I sold my story, yes, but, this wasn't an attempt at extortion and so on. She zeroed in on the number of ways in which Stormy has made money off of this and has touted it. And here's one example. She showed tweets beginning March 30th, 2023, the day Trump was first indicted, celebrating the criminal case against him, per Katie Phang of MSNBC, who, we're reliant on the reporters for exactly the wordage that happens, the verbiage inside the courtroom. Exhibit, a photo of Daniels's online store with a candle that is titled Stormy, Saint of Indictments candle. Necheles, you're saying you are the saint of the Trump indictment. Daniels, no. Okay, so already you're not saying that? Your candle is Stormy Daniels' indictment patron saint altar candle. Like, what indictment are you talking about on the day after? Anyway, so she denies that she's saying she's the saint of the Trump indictment. Necheles, you are selling Team Stormy merchandise, making $40 each. Daniels, no, I was making about $7. Okay, but the point's taken, right? You are selling Team Stormy merchandise. Necheles, do you plan to continue selling your story? Daniels, I plan to continue to do my job and fund my extraordinary legal bills. Necheles, you have an online store. You are bragging about getting President Trump indicted. Daniels, I got President Trump indicted? Necheles, aren't you bragging about that? Daniels, no. Just look at the damn candle. And here's the last bit of it, per the New York Times. Necheles, you're celebrating indictments by selling things from your store. Then Daniels goes to, not unlike Mr. Trump. So it's no longer no. Now it's, yes, I'm doing it, but Trump cashes in on things too. And so that's it on the candle and the money. This is not a credible person, Phil, and we can keep going through the examples.
Yeah, there was testimony, Megyn, that she would turn down or cancel media interviews because they weren't going to pay her. Anytime a witness takes the witness stand, when they sit in that chair, their own credibility is always an issue in the case. And she may not be a convicted fraudster like Michael Cohen, which we'll see next week. But look, if she has a financial interest in this case becoming, high profile or anything else, or just perpetuating this, pushing it forward, making sure that the case goes to trial, she has a financial interest in that. That means the jury can take all of that into consideration to determine her credibility. On top of the financial interest that she has in all of this, she never seems to be able to tell the same version of events about what's happened. So you have what's called prior inconsistent statements. These lawyers did a very good job, I think, detailing and chronicling those and going through them item by item by item to show the jury in a much better way than I could. I can't keep it straight in my head, but they chronicled all of the different statements that she's made and how it has changed and morphed over time. And I think this whole thing about her being a fiction storyteller in terms of writing scripts about fictional sexual encounters, I think that was a work of art by the defense team. They did a fantastic job, Megyn, in my opinion, with a witness who should not even have been on the stand in the first place. What in the hell does Stormy Daniels have to do with bookkeeping at the Trump organization? Of course, the answer to that is nothing. And if the answer is nothing, she should not have been on the stand. Judge Merchan has showed his bias. He's biased against the defendant in this case. And he's risking reversible error just by allowing the prosecutor to call her.